Let's start our 8 planets assignment. First thing we need to do is create an assignment folder. Rename it following our naming convention. Last name VCD1015_04. We can go right into Photoshop. Let's create a new file. And we want an 8.5 by 11 inch document, resolution 150 pixels per inch, color mode CMYK, and a black background. Let's create a new layer. And let's name our layer Planet. Let's choose the elliptical marquee tool. Hold Option to drag from the center and hold Shift to lock your selection to a perfect circle. Let's fill this selection with a color, so let's choose Edit, Fill. Let's choose a color other than white. So for my planet, the first planet that I'm going to make is going to be blue. So I'm just going to choose a nice blue color. Command D to deselect. Go back to the Move tool and you can move this planet around. We want this to be centered on our page. If you need to resize it, you can press Command T, hold the Shift key down, drag from one of the corners, hold Option Shift to drag from the central point. When you're happy with the size, then double click to keep the change. Now this is a good size for us. We want a little bit of room around our planet. The black background represents space. We have our planet with a little bit of background around it. We don't want to crowd it. Let's not make it too large like this. So something like this is about right. Okay, so we want to make a gas planet. It's not going to have really any discernible detail. It's just going to be a hazy kind of planet with a soft kind of a glow. So the first thing I want to do is right-click on my planet layer, choose Convert to Smart Object, go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we want a little bit of blur around the edge of our planet. We don't want it to look like a paper cutout. Just a little bit of soft haze. Okay, so we want to start giving our planet some dimension. We also imagine our planet to have somewhat of an atmosphere, and the atmosphere would reflect light and it would glow a little bit. Let's choose Effects, Inner Glow. Now I already have some settings here that seem to work. Opacity 10%, blend mode is linear dodge, choke 9%, size 32%, range 80%, and then I chose a blue color. So just for illustration purposes, if I click on this color swatch, the default you will probably have is white. So let's take a look at what this inner glow will look like as white. All right, so you can certainly experiment with these settings. You can see as I increase the opacity, the glow is getting much more intense. If I increase the size, it gets a bit softer. But what I'm going for is something fairly subtle. So I'll go back to my original settings. And since my planet is blue, I'm going to choose a shade of blue. I don't want white. I just want this to be a subtle effect. So some light blue will work. And then let's choose outer glow. And the same thing with outer glow. We're trying to just get the idea that there's maybe a soft glowing atmosphere. You can experiment with the blend modes. It seems that normal works pretty well. That's probably the best option. Again, if you want to experiment with the opacity, the higher percentage, the more obvious the glow becomes. Again, I'm just looking for something kind of a soft kind of effect. Choose OK. And since we made our layer a smart object, we get what are called smart filters and smart effects. And what this allows you to do is to make adjustments to these effects after you've applied them. So these little visibility icons that look like eyes, if I toggle these on and off, I can see that it turns my effects on and off. And if I wanted to make some kind of adjustment, maybe I wasn't quite happy with the effect that I chose, then I can double click the name of the effect or the filter, and I can go ahead and make some changes to that. So the great thing about using smart filters is that you have a lot of flexibility. Another thing you can do if you start running out of room on your layers window is to collapse the effects, and these icons appear that show that you do have some effects applied, and if you want to show them again, just expand that. Okay, another thing you can do is you can toggle the layers on and off, just clicking that visibility icon as well. Okay, so we're ready to move on. What we'd like to do is make our planet look three-dimensional, like a sphere. Right now it looks flat, and it's not very interesting. We certainly don't quite get the illusion that it's a planet of any kind. So let's create a new layer. Let's name this layer Shadow. And on our shadow layer, let's choose our elliptical marquee tool. Click and drag out another circle. I'm holding Shift and Option to drag from the center. Let's make this circle a little bit bigger than our planet. Right now it doesn't really matter if it's exactly centered over our planet or not. Okay, and let's go ahead to go to Edit, Fill, choose Black, Command D to deselect, choose our Move tool, and just move that down so we get this sort of a crescent shape effect. Let's turn our shadow into a smart object. And let's apply a Gaussian blur to this. So instead of creating a Gaussian blur from scratch, we can hold the Option key and click and drag our smart filter from our planet layer up to our shadow layer. Expand our layer so we can see the effect. And let's check to see if it did put that blur on it. So the blur is there, but it's very we want it a lot more blurry than this. We don't want that. We want to make a really, really soft shadow effect. So I'm just experimenting here to see what looks about right. Again, I can always go back and make changes later. And I'm going to move this shadow a little bit. Let's decrease the opacity so we can see the planet color through it a bit. And let's choose for our blend mode multiply. Decrease the opacity a bit more. Okay. Let's click and drag our shadow to duplicate. Command T to transform. Hold Shift and drag. Let's make this shadow a little bit smaller. Double click to save our change. And drag the shadow up a little bit. Let's take the fill down somewhat. So what I'd really like to do is to have this little bit of a glowing reflected light showing around the entire edge of the planet. So we can make some adjustments here. One thing that we can do is we can select our layers. So if I want to select both shadow layers, I select one layer, I click on it, I hold the Shift key down, and I click the other. And if we do that, we can move the layers together. We could resize them together. So if I press Command T, hold the Shift key to lock the proportion, I can resize those. And actually, I'd like to put those back, so let's do a step backward. I can also link these layers. So when I choose Link Layers from this Options menu, little chain links appear on these layers. That way, even if I deselect them, or if I select just one of them, these link icons will show that when I move the selected layer, the linked layer will move with it. I don't have to select both of them. So I can move that around if I'd like. But I'm going to leave it where it is. All right, so I think this is looking pretty good. I'm going to adjust the opacity a bit here on these, I think, just to get a little bit of that blue color of the planet showing through. All right, what we need now is some kind of a highlight. So again, the sunlight is coming from the upper left, kind of toward the back, the part facing away from us. So let's make a new layer. Move it to the top of our list. Name this layer Highlight. Let's drag out a new ellipse. This one's going to be a lot smaller than the shadow ellipses or our planet. Go to Edit, Fill, white for the color. Command D to deselect. We can move this around. So we're going to put a blur on our highlight layer as well. And we could go to Filter, Blur, and choose Gaussian Blur, and then go ahead and make our adjustments. But why don't we copy our blur from one of our shadow layers? So the way to copy a blur from a shadow layer is, or a filter or effect from a shadow layer, is to hold Option to make a copy, and then click and drag on the filter or effect. And when I try to do that, it's not letting me do it. It doesn't work for some reason. And the reason is because I forgot to make my highlight layer a smart object. So let's click that layer to select it, right click our mouse, choose Convert to Smart Object, and now we can hold Option, click and drag the smart filter, and apply that to our highlight layer. So maybe this is a little bit soft. The blur is a little bit too diffuse and it's really not having that much effect. So let's go ahead and double click it, and now we can make some adjustments. So the radius is very large because we had a much larger ellipse for the shadow than we do for the highlight, so we can reduce that. Okay, so that blur is 30 pixels. So maybe we want to make this a little bit more of an oval shape, because it's going to be reflection along the edge of our planet. Maybe we want to move that over to the edge. Let's rotate it a little bit so that it follows the angle. Maybe we want to reduce the opacity a little bit, make it a little more subtle. And let's right-click our highlight layer, choose Duplicate Layer, and Command T to transform. Hold the Shift key down and Option, so that we are resizing from a central point. Make it a bit smaller. Increase the opacity a bit. Let's double click the Gaussian blur to make the radius a bit smaller. So we're trying to make more of a highlight. We can link these two layers together, these two highlight layers. Now we can move them around a little bit. Maybe we can change the opacity, make them just even a little bit lighter. We could resize them together, Command T, Shift to keep the proportion. And then, let's take a look and see if this is a result that we like. I might go back to my shadows and again maybe play with the opacity a little bit. See if I want it lighter or darker. All right, but the idea is that we want to have a highlight, a shadow, we want it to look as if we have a spherical object here. And because this is a planet in space with an atmosphere and reflected sunlight, we want to make sure that we see the glow of that reflected light all the way around the edge of the planet. So let's go ahead and save our first planet. Think about our own solar system. In our own solar system, we have the inner planets, which are rocky planets. They have a crust. We have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Then we have the outer planets that are large gas planets with no solid surface. Jupiter, Saturn, and etc. So I would consider this a gas planet. So let's go ahead and choose File, Save As, navigate to our assignment folder that we created earlier. Make sure we only highlight or select the outside of the .psd. We want to save that. That .psd is the file type. It means it's a Photoshop file. We want to preserve our layers. So make sure that when you save your file, the format is Photoshop and the layers option is checked. And let's use our file naming convention, last name, underscore. For this, it's a gas planet, so we'll call it gas planet. And let's number it. So this is our first one. Let's number it 1 and choose Save. And the planets that you're going to be handing in are going to be in JPEG format. I do not want you to turn in the PSD files, the original layered Photoshop files, because they're very large files and it's going to take up a lot of hard drive space, and I don't need those. I just need JPEG images, which will be a lot smaller. So let's take a look at an example here of how this should be submitted. So even though you're saving your PSD file inside of your assignment folder, I'd like you to separate those out or make a duplicate folder in which you only give me JPEG versions of each one of those files. So this is an example. You're going to decide you've got to have at least 3 rocky planets. The remainder can be gas planets, and one of them has to have rings. You're just going to give me the JPEG versions of those. So this would be an example of a project or assignment that would be turned in. In order to make the JPEGs, you go to File, Export. Let's do Save for Web. Make sure JPEG is checked. So there's several different file options. We want JPEG. Make sure maximum quality is checked. Image size can stay the same. Hit Save. Navigate to your assignment folder. Again, save your JPEG.